So thank you very much for coming along. First thing you've got to do is you've got to make sure you download the LinkedIn app, because I'm going to show you a great trick about halfway through the presentation. An amazing trick which you can use at parties and events and conferences and everywhere, but you have to have the app. So have the app ready. Don't be fumbling around with the app when I basically say to do it, because as soon as I say to do it, you're going to want to do it straight away, because it only works if all of you do it at one go, and it only works in this particular room if you have the app. So make sure you have the app. We also have several books to give away to encourage you to ask questions, because I know Asian audiences don't like asking questions, so I try to give them away. I bribe people to ask questions. So we're going to give away lots of my best-selling books. If you ask any question at all along the way, you can wait to the end, you can ask them along the way. This is very much about you, so I very much thank IBM and NTUC for inviting me to do this, because I love the way that we can actually share. I'm an entrepreneur in Singapore, have been for 10 years. I employ a fantastic team of 35, mostly Singaporeans, plus the odd PR, 3 or 4 of which are in the corner on the right-hand side there, kind of busy working away. See, there's no rest for them, hard at work. But this is very much about you. This is about how you can develop your personal branding, how you can actually develop your personal branding through LinkedIn and project a personal brand to help you market yourselves and market your company. And it's an investment in your future as much as anything else. So it's very much about your personal brand, about your business. But why listen to me? Many other people out there say they know about LinkedIn, but they don't. Because they don't have, for example, over 1,000 LinkedIn recommendations. So I'm the only entrepreneur and keynote speaker in the world that actually has more than 1,000 recommendations on LinkedIn about LinkedIn. That's all we talk about. I know nothing about Facebook. So don't ask me any questions about Facebook. I'm not even on Facebook. So don't even ask me questions. I know nothing. I literally know zero about Facebook. This guy here knows more about Facebook than I do. Literally. We also won the LinkedIn Power Profile Award several times, awarded by LinkedIn in the tower next door, I believe, under 2 floors. And they're the ones that would give you the most amount of views, the most amount of engagement. And so I'm happy that I won that several times. We're also the team have actually won things like B2B Marketing Agency of the Year, for example, and Asia's Best Brand. We work tremendously hard at what we do, which is basically LinkedIn marketing. We also have the 3 books which I mentioned, which you can get on Amazon and iTunes and even Spotify. What you can't get them on is Kindle, because did you know that Kindle is banned in Singapore? There you go, Kindle is banned in Singapore. If you want to get Kindle, you have to switch your VPN on, a bit like if you get good Netflix. So good Netflix is like the UK Netflix or the US Netflix. You have to use your VPN. You get more content, so you do the same thing for Kindle. Otherwise, you can't download Kindle in Singapore for some unknown reason. But you can buy the hardback, the softback, you can listen to iTunes, and it's on Spotify as well. So if you have Spotify, you can listen to my audiobooks on Spotify. We have 3 books, LinkedIn Mastery, Personal Branding Mastery, and our book from last year, which is Social Selling Mastery for entrepreneurs to celebrate our social selling conference, which is coming up again this year in the towers across the road there, Marina Bay Sands. On July the 9th, just gone on sale with 20 amazing speakers. We also have 4 different brands, which we basically all link to LinkedIn marketing. One of which is Black Marketing, which has been going for 6 years now in Singapore. Our second one is basically Rockstar Keynote Speaker, which is actually about women speakers, because we noticed that there were too many male speakers actually getting too many gigs, too many all-male panels, for example. So we decided to create a brand which actually helped women rock stars speakers across the world. We have clients in America, in the US, in the UK, in Australia, Hong Kong, and Singapore, and the rest of Asia. And we basically get their profiles up and running on LinkedIn. We get them more work on LinkedIn, and we push them as being amazing speakers, because they are amazing speakers. They just basically, because of the system of keynote speaking, it tends to favor men over women. So we basically want to push back on that. We also have the conference itself, Social Selling 2019. So if you want to learn more about social selling and all the different aspects of social selling, do come to our conference. We sold out last year across the road at Microsoft. We had 400 tickets sold. This year we're going to go for 500 tickets at Marina Bay Sands with 20 amazing speakers in one amazing day. On July the 9th, we're doing early birds at the moment, so do sign up for that. We also have a Masterclass brand, which is very much about this. This is a mini version of my Masterclass brand, where we talk about how you can use LinkedIn, how we go to companies and organizations like you to try and inspire and empower you to use LinkedIn for your benefit. Because ultimately, LinkedIn's about you. Why is that? Well, if I Google someone, for example, so I Google Shay, who's one of my friends, who actually works for IBM, who helped me set this up, the first thing that comes up, without putting LinkedIn in, is actually his LinkedIn page. So if you Google yourselves, and you should Google yourselves on a regular basis, you'd be amazed that LinkedIn normally comes up first, second, or third. So unless you happen to be a celebrity or a dead celebrity, you tend to actually come up first if you actually be on LinkedIn. So think about that, because that's the first impression someone gets of you if they were going to meet you. They will Google you. So whether you like it or not, people are Googling you all the time. So you should Google yourself and prepare your LinkedIn. Because when I press on Shay's profile, for example, I get a very positive impression of him in terms of his personal branding. Same thing for IBM. You look at IBM's LinkedIn profile, for example. So you should be following the IBM LinkedIn page. And of course with NTUC as well. You should be following the NTUC LinkedIn page as well as all the other pages, of course. But why LinkedIn? Well, I came to Singapore 10 years ago and I didn't know a single person. So I needed to basically reach out and use my connections in the UK. I had 200 connections at the time and say, who do you know in Singapore? On LinkedIn. And then it very much became apparent that LinkedIn worked in terms of networking, in terms of getting jobs, in terms of marketing, in terms of winning clients. So that's why LinkedIn, to me, proves that it worked phenomenally well. Also, it's just past the 600 million user mark, which is absolutely phenomenal. Only professionals, not going after the WeChat market or the Facebook market or any other market. It's basically not mass market. It's very much professionals, 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 white collar. And if you look at where those professionals are, they literally are across the whole of the world, apart from 2 different countries. Can anyone name the 2 countries that LinkedIn is not in? No, China has 50 million. North Korea is one of them, correct. Second country, you'll see the big gap. Russia, correct. The only 2 countries in the world you cannot get LinkedIn is actually Russia and North Korea. Everywhere else you can get it. Get it in Syria, Afghanistan, Venezuela, all the different places. I love the fact you can get LinkedIn in Colombia. There are 10 million people in Colombia who are basically doing import-export entrepreneurs. Yes, precisely. We've all watched Narcos on Netflix, haven't we? Find Escobar on LinkedIn. But you'll see it's global. It's truly global. And Asia is very much the place where it's growing. Look at India, 55 million, second largest in the world. China's the 3rd largest. Brazil's the 4th largest. And the UK, where I'm originally from, is the 5th largest. But it is very much growing in Asia. Indonesia has 11 million. Philippines is growing. Thailand's growing. Singapore has 2.3 million. Absolutely phenomenal, given Singapore only has about 5 million, 6 million people in the country. So LinkedIn's very much global. And LinkedIn's very much a gamification platform. So what I mean by that is the more you do on LinkedIn, the more you get out of it. So if you take some of my tips tonight and just start inputting them into your profile, you'll actually gain traction. You'll gain searches. Your search will go up as a result of you doing things on LinkedIn. So think about just doing some little things. Stop watching so many YouTube videos and Facebook videos and Instagram scrolling. Yes, you're all smiling. You're all going, yes, I should do that anyway. Because when you say to me, I don't have time, Chris, you're going, well, stop watching Facebook and just stop YouTube. Do more on LinkedIn. Do the app in the morning. Do the app in the evening. On the MRT, waiting for a coffee shop, whatever it happens to be. And I love this quote from James Blunt. Obviously, because I do not like James Blunt, I would not be here in a Sex Pistols t-shirt saying I like James Blunt because I'd have no credibility left. But James Blunt had this great quote which represents LinkedIn. He said, I'm self-deprecating because I'm British. If I was American, I would tell you how great I was. And that's very much how it is. Americans, they're built with DNA which says promote, promote, promote. They come out the womb trying to sell you something. That's what Americans do, and it's brilliant because they actually get the thing you have to pitch. And you have to basically pitch for life. And they do the same thing on LinkedIn, so they're very promotional friendly on LinkedIn. That's why if you ever connect lots of people on LinkedIn who are Americans, you get pitched all day long. So you have to be less Asian, I would say less British, and more American in the way you actually come across on LinkedIn to promote yourself. So we believe there's 4 different ways of actually promoting yourself on LinkedIn to achieve your objectives. One is about your personal branding. Second is about content marketing. Third one's about company branding through your personal profile. And the 4th one is social selling. So I'm going to touch on all these aspects today. The first tip is your visual impression. As you can tell, I'm quite big on visual impressions. You have to actually stand out. And in a conservative society like Singapore, for example, it helps if you have a mohawk and actually have some tattoos and so forth. You do tend to stand out. So it's very, very good. You have to make a very visual impression. So if I show you this, you get a visual impression of a personal brand. So you think about the Joker, for example, and you think about how he has a personal brand in terms of the values of his hairstyle, the way he dresses, the slash, the cuts, the makeup. He has a personal brand. You have an impression of his personal brand. You also have that impression. You also have a personal brand. If I show you, for example, somebody else, I believe that every single person has a metaphorical mohawk. Not a real mohawk, obviously, because not everyone can go around with a real mohawk, but everyone has a metaphorical one. You have something which somebody else can go, oh, that's interesting, she does this, or he does that. So you have to answer yourself, what's your metaphorical mohawk? Like, for example, Karen here, who I met last year in Auckland. She is the GPS girl. So she is the voice on the GPS that says recalculating, recalculating, recalculating. She's on 2 billion devices. She's also on Siri. So she's on billions of devices. So she's known as the GPS girl. So that's her mohawk. Now, obviously, she doesn't make much money from being the GPS girl. So she's also a keynote speaker and a trainer and a coach, and she's got consultancy. But she's built her personal brand on being the GPS girl. So you have to ask yourself, what's your mohawk? What's your GPS girl moment? What makes you stand out? Look at Steve Dawson here, for example, who's on Fox Sports. He wants you to know he's the coach. So we went big and went, he's the coach. And so you go to his profile, you know he's the coach. Or you look at Andrew here, Andrew Bryant, for example, self-leadership. So he's big on self-leadership. You go to his profile and boom, you know he's into self-leadership. Or Jacinta here, for example, who's the tech leader. Because she worked for Microsoft and she worked for people like Dell. So she's going, I'm going for the tech space. I'm a woman, coach, leader, keynote speaker in the tech space. You look at Avi here, for example. He's delivering delight. Nobody else out there is delivering delight and says so on their LinkedIn profile. So that's his mohawk. Even Sophia the robot obviously has a mohawk. She's a robot. And she's on LinkedIn. And if you're following her post, she actually has a mini Sophia robot now, which is quite fantastic. So don't do things like this. Because as much as I might aspire to being George Clooney one day, I'm not. So I can't use his profile. And this is what I call your classic Facebook photograph. You're down Boat Key, you've had a few drinks, 3 a.m., somebody says, dress as a panda, you've had a few drinks, it's 3 a.m., you say, yes, why not? And somebody else says, put it on your LinkedIn, and then you agree. In the morning you regret it. Don't have Facebook photographs on LinkedIn. Or this, which one's Melita? Eeny, meeny, miny, mo. How do you create a relationship with someone you don't even know? Why do people use animals on their LinkedIn profiles? I don't know. Unless you're the brand director of Guinness, that makes absolutely no sense. And this guy could not decide which photograph to use, so he used all the photographs he could possibly imagine and put them all together. Elizabeth here went for the full Tinder look. Really not a great look, Elizabeth. You really shouldn't be using your Tinder picture on LinkedIn, especially when you work for a small company called the Hyatt Hotels and you're in charge of human resources. Hashtag me too. Definitely don't do this. If you live in China, not a very wise idea to be using this on your LinkedIn profile. Very career limiting, I would say. Your personal brand statement is very important. You look at something like Nike, just do it. That's their personal brand. That's their branding statement. Well, you have a brand statement too. Look at Apple. It's think different. So think about how your personal brand comes across. Mine is the only CEO with a mohawk. Because it works, and it works across the whole of the world. I have yet to find any other CEO in the world who has a mohawk. Follow the headline follows you around, which is why it's so important you actually have it. And actually think about what it resonates with you and how it actually talks about with you. So when I share something, for example, it comes up. When I comment on something, it comes up. When I get tagged by somebody else, for example, it comes up. When I get found by somebody else, it comes up. So these are all the times I can actually sell as a result of the keywords in my name. So people go, oh, that's interesting, he does a keynote speaking. Oh, that's interesting, he's got 3 books coming out. Oh, that's interesting, he does LinkedIn, he does social selling. If you don't use it, you can't sell yourself socially on LinkedIn. And you end up looking like that, where you have no keywords at all. You don't know what that person does. So you look at how you appear on other people's profiles. You're basically marketing yourself on other people's profiles. Obviously, everyone knows what Bill Gates does. But unless you are Bill Gates, they don't know what you do. So you have to actually help them by putting keywords in your headlines. You want to challenge people as well, right? Mike Nackey does this. The coolest guy in Nashville. Google it to see for yourself. So we did. And he is. Coolest guy in Nashville. So he's challenging you because that's what he does. He does Google for a living. So he's actually using it to actually sell his product. If you're hiring, say you're hiring. Let people know you're recruiting. If you're actually looking for a job, tell people looking for opportunities. Because how are people supposed to know on LinkedIn you're looking for a job if you don't actually tell them? So put it on there, then people can actually say, oh, Crystal, looking for a job, approach her, and then talk to her about getting a job. Use your background picture powerfully. Look at the Ritz-Carlton in Shanghai. Very, very cool bar. You can see for miles there, so he's using the picture very effectively, going, bang, you can come to my restaurant and my bar and see this. Or Dahlia here has got Euphoric Coaching, one of the young entrepreneurs of Singapore. She's using it as branding to brand herself on LinkedIn. Or Ryan Pyle here, who thanks to on BBC and Amazon Prime, he climbs tops of mountains and he says, here I am. He's about leadership. So he's using his picture to say, I'm at the top of the mountain, boom. Or someone like Jane, for example, who's gone for the branding, keynote speaker, her brand, and also her book. It's a part of her personal branding, how you are going to market yourself using your background picture. Or the way Pippa does this in terms of looking at how she's combined her brand and put their products out there. She's using it simply to sell her products. Simple stuff. It's basically fantastic marketing, as you can see. I don't know what Mark is marketing, but he basically wants to go, when it rains, get an umbrella. So you basically think, what's he on about? And maybe even start a conversation with him as a result of it. But LinkedIn's not dynamic. So the reason why we tend to leave a picture here or basically don't have anything important here is because this is what it looks like on the laptop, but the mobile, your picture moves to the middle. But your background picture does not change. So basically you have to think about how your background picture works on mobile and on laptop. So don't do things like this. Lonely and young girl. And she lives in Singapore. We try to find her to make her less lonely. She's on that swing all by herself. Poor Cindy. Can't find her anywhere. Albert here felt the need to put human being down. As if anyone's searching on LinkedIn going, I need to find a human being. It's obviously those people who found Sophia the robot wanted somebody else. Dave K here went for executive demigod at Miracle Health. Sorry, Dave, that's not a photograph to sell Miracle Health. Shelley Shara here went wife of Stephen Shara. Why would she do that? Especially as Stephen did not reciprocate. Stephen has not got husband of Shelley Shara. And he should. In these days of equal opportunities, he should say that. Just like Dale has got spouse of owner of Picosa Mexican restaurant. So he has no brand status by himself. He's just going out with someone who owns a dodgy restaurant in Hong Kong. Lecturer at retired and enjoying time with the family. Does he look like he's enjoying time with the family? No, I think he'd rather be back at work. Sean here went for CEO, Accelerated Digital for the Global Corporates. HSBC, go, wow, I've connected with the CEO of HSBC. Amazing, this billion-dollar organization. And I go to his experience, and it says he's in charge of the website. There's a bit of a difference between the CEO of HSBC and the guy who's in charge of the website. Don't claim something you're not. Like Hussein here, she's the managing director. No, she's not. She's the personal assistant to the managing director. These are two different roles, very different kinds of responsibilities. And people like, if you win an award, for example, it's best to be slightly updated and not win People of the Year 2010. Don't do that, because it makes people think, what did they do for the last 9 years? Like one of those TripAdvisor restaurants who win something for 10 years ago and they haven't won anything since. You don't go back there, do you? Or Miss Switzerland 2013 is like, was that the last thing you did that was notable? You won 2013 Miss Switzerland? No, not a very good idea. And Alexander here didn't like his face very much, so he decided to cut it off. Why would you do that? It makes no sense. Did he not look at it when he upgraded? Did one of his friends not tell him he basically can't see his face? And if you're going to be a keynote speaker, it's best to have a full room like this on your background picture, not an empty room like this with the one person leaving. It's not a great look for a keynote speaker. It really isn't. It doesn't really give you much confidence. And don't do things like this. Put a little dot there. That doesn't work either. And if you're in marketing, you really should use your collateral. You spent millions of dollars actually spending money on. So this guy here is the CMO of Visa. So why has he got a blue background? Why is there no Visa branding there? They've got that annoying advert on Golden Village, which they play every single day for the last 5 years, which really annoys me. Sure, they've got creative for that they can use. They should be doing it. And unless you work for MBS or Singapore Tourism Board, don't do this, because you don't work for these places. You're basically just advertising Singapore, which is great. But there's a million other people who've got the same background. Literally a million other people. So, of course, if you work for MBS, you're allowed to do that because you work for Marina Bay Sands. You're allowed to say, this is my background, which gives you less opportunity to say, you can't use that if you work for MBS and you use this blue background. Because you actually have the most iconic, most Instagrammed hotel in the world, so you have really no excuse not to have a good blue background picture. And of course, if you're putting on an event at MBS, you can also do this. So I actually do have an MBS background, but I tell people why I've got an MBS background. Because we've got social selling going on there, so I'm using it to actually market the brand itself, to market the event. So really think through what you're using your background picture for. And why would you do this? I used to work at a good company, Uber, Netflix, Spotify. You notice that Bella does not mention her current company. So she basically used to work at 3 great companies and doesn't work for any good company now, but she puts X next to it. But the worst people are people who used to work at Google. There are 46,000 people who've got ex-Google in their LinkedIn profiles. So they used to work at a good company, but they don't work there anymore. Listen to ex-Google, ex-Google. And this guy here wasn't happy with that. He works for Google, but still had to put on ex-McKinsey, ex-Goldman Sachs. It's like, why are you wasting your name there and your keywords there to put that on there? Don't do that. And don't do this. Former head of strategy at BBH, gone client side, making it really sound like he didn't really want to leave BBH at all to go to Zurich. But Zurich are paying his salary, so you should really do that on your LinkedIn profile.